Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about riffs? Talking about albums featuring our favorite riffs, talking to people who love riffs. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, is the great Bald Hope, the great Baldini, Dylan Adams. Dylan, how are you?
Great. Doing great. We're joined by an old friend and Owen here, who you'll introduce shortly, but really excited about this guest we have today.
I will say, yes, representing the great nation of Australia, our old friend, writer, podcast host extraordinaire. You might have heard him and his co-host Paige on their wonderful program, The Pitch of Discontent. You may have heard him on our previous episode covering Unearth's 3 in the Eyes of Fire. Back with us again, Owen Marowitz. How are you?
I'm good, boys. Thank you so much for having me back on the show. I didn't think I would get the call up, off the bench second time, but here we are, excited to make it. I'm calling in once again from the future. So I hope that's enough for everyone tuning in. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. How's dad life? Congratulations again. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess for people who might not know, we had a baby girl in October. So I'm in dad mode. I'm responsible for changing lots of diapers, while my wife and illustrious co-host is responsible for feeding said child. But yeah, man, I don't know. We're pushing through sleep deprivation, and I'm here. What can I say?
Hey, it's the same for me and Dill. That's all. I get it. I understand.
Dylan's the baby of the show, correct?
Yeah.
By appearance only.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
As Dylan mentioned, we have a very, very special guest with us today. We did that episode on 3 in the Eyes of Fire, covering the history of Unearth and that record. It was a great time. And we have one of the people who made that fucking record with us today. Coming in from the East Coast, none other than Mr. Trevor Phipps. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
It's a pleasure to have you. How was tour?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, we were doing a celebration mini tour. Atreyu was doing a tour for The Curse. Our records came out the same date in 04, so they invited us to do the Oncoming Storm. And so we did 8 shows, and every show was packed, high energy. So it was good to have one more tour before the end of the year.
Oh yeah. How was it? You did a hometown show too, correct?
Yeah, played in Worcester. That's basically our home venue, even though we're not from Worcester or from the North Shore. But we've played there, got to be over 40 times now over the past 27 years. So it's definitely our home venue.
That's crazy.
I know that stage very well.
Yeah, I bet.
So, obviously in doing an episode on one of your records, there's only so much that, based on like old articles and some of the research that we did, we're only human. There's only so much we can get right. Did you notice anything in particular that stood out? Was there anything that, maybe we got wrong? I'd love to hear maybe your like first impressions of like listening to the episode, which again, I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
I remember listening to it and being kind of surprised by how much you guys knew, because I know a lot was on our DVD, but you guys pieced together other pieces of information from either interviews or clips on the internet. So it was pretty much all there. I know there was some things that I wanted to answer, but I'd have to review. But everything was very, very close. So it was good to relive that record through your podcast, actually. So it kind of brought me back to those days in Seattle doing that record.
Hell yeah.
I just wanted to say, Trevor, like doing episodes on other people's music, and like especially not being a musician myself, I always feel this like twiggling sense of like, are they actually going to listen to it? And there's like an apprehension that comes about in like talking about someone else's art and then having them like listen to you kind of analyze it and dissect it. So I wanted to kind of ask Austin and Dylan, What was it like when you found out that Trevor actually listened to the episode?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it also kind of makes you like my butthole clenching up a little bit. Like, oh, did I get everything right? Did I say something stupid? Which I definitely have before. So it was very nice that it was received okay. So that I appreciated that.
Yeah, I just think it's awesome. Like I was so stoked and like blown away to find out that Trevor actually listened to it, that he thought it was good, and that we didn't fuck anything major up. So yeah,
right,
crazy.
Good
Sorry,
job,
Dylan, I cut you off.
No, it's usually just like, it's flattering at first, right? It's like, holy shit, not only do we have people that actually enjoy listening to us, but the individuals that created the art that we're discussing about or having a conversation about are listening and paying attention, and then say they enjoy it is a big thing. And then, kind of to go along with what Austin said, it's like, fuck, hopefully I didn't put my foot in my mouth. But at that point, I've always taken a mindset of, fuck, I said it, it's out there, I can't change it. Like, just roll with the fucking punches. So it's flattering overall.
One thing that we discussed in that episode, Owen had written a chapter on the breakdown. We talk about riffs a lot, obviously, on our show. Trevor, being someone who has been involved in, aggressive, extreme music for this long, what to you makes a riff? What do you look for in a riff? What do you look for in a breakdown? What makes a breakdown? I'm just so curious, like, having written music and listened to music, this type of music for this long, how would you define something like that?
I mean, generally breakdowns, it's pretty easy formula. It's basically just a chug, making it tribal. But if you make it interesting, throw a little bit of off time in there, that's when it gets unique. That's how you kind of set yourself apart. So, I think the early days of us listening to, even bands like Meshuggah, how it didn't really work its way into our writing so much, but just the kind of the off time stuff made it, all right, let's make this breakdown a little bit more than just a dun, 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 so just mix it up a bit, makes it a bit more appealing. But riffs, man, there's a whole lot you can paint with a riff, as long as it's, I can't really say exactly what I'm looking for, because I can like rock riffs. I can like a country riff, but it just has to be pleasing. You hear it and you like the sounds, and that's where Buzz comes from. He's a self-taught guy. He didn't get taught, all the technical jargon, but he writes the majority of our riffs, and he just writes what he thinks sounds good, and he just gets better and better at, training himself on the scales and the fretboard, and make music that we like to hear.
Trevor, you mentioned before coming off some dates with Atreyu and revisiting the material from The Oncoming Storm, which was out in 2004. So that record is like 21 years old, old enough to drink. I wanted to kind of ask you on this idea of like breakdowns having to be unique and surprising. In revisiting material from that record for that set, are there parts of songs or maybe entire songs that you revisit now in 2025 and you're like, fuck, I can't believe we did that? Or I don't remember it being that crazy. Like, is there stuff on like an older record that continues to surprise you?
Usually when we put out a record, we give as many songs a shot live as we think might take. Because of course you love all the songs that you wrote for the record, and when you're done, you're in love with the whole thing. But then you kind of test each song with your audience, and then the songs that stick the most, you play the most, and then over time you kind of forget how to even play some songs. So to revisit certain songs like Predetermined Sky, Loud to Purify, and False Idols, songs we almost never play, felt great. And I think the song for me that really stood out is Predetermined Sky. That for some reason felt like it connect even more today than it did when we wrote it, especially the guitar part towards the end. It just creates kind of an ambiance, and I leave the stage and the guitar players get up and they do their thing, and it builds the crowd. The toms are going with Mike. Then I come out and everything kind of comes together. And it got an emotional response from the crowd, and also our guys. As we played it differently. We played it with more passion than I think when we wrote it. So I think that song was kind of the winner of this tour.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's a lot of Unearth questions I want to ask you today. and they're going to tie into our topic of discussion. But we asked you to, if you wanted to talk about a record today. And out of all the records you could have picked, out of all the bands you could have picked, you chose Destroy the Machines, the debut album from Earth Crisis. And I'd have to know, how does Earth Crisis fit into your trajectory as a vocalist? Where did you first discover them? Why this record? Out of all the records you could have picked, why did you pick this debut?
I think it's an underrated record for one. I know it's widely celebrated, but I don't think it's celebrated enough. I think in the email I compared it to Slaughter of the Soul by At the Gates. It started something at that time, because bands of my era, we grew up mostly listening to thrash. That was an intro to the world. We thrashed and we kind of went backwards and got Sabbath. Of course, we all knew Ozzy, but Ozzy was popular in the 80s. And so we backtracked and got Sabbath. And so we we started to build our whole knowledge of metal. But then we kind of got sick of the solo, because you have to recall that back then glam was a huge thing, and the solo was just overdone. And like, man, I wish we had music like this, like Pantera, but without the solos. And sure enough, here we go. Then bands like Earth Crisis come out. It's like, wow, it's heavy as hell, and there's no flamboyant guitar work. It's the sick riffs, sick leads, very catchy breakdowns, and parts you can sing along to. So that they came to me in the early 90s. It was the Firestorm EP. I had the cassette tape. No, I had the little tiny CD. That's what I had. I had the cassette tape of Destroy the Machines. And that was a big intro. Even my first band, even though we weren't straight edge, I didn't drink growing up at all, because I was focused on sports. But I never claimed straight edge. But we covered Firestorm in a couple of shows in high school. So that's how long that record got out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big influence for me. So I think Carl's voice really found its way into my style as well. I like his approach. I even kind of borrow some of his. I'm not sure if I haven't seen him do it recently, but we played a bunch of shows with him over the years. And there's a thing he does. He kind of taps on his diaphragm during certain parts, and kind of does this. And I'm not sure you've seen it. He does this. So I've borrowed that over the years. It's now part of my moves, because I liked it. It just kind of helps me keep time on certain parts. And I'd say he's a huge influence on me.
Before we move on, Trevor, you mentioned like sharing the stage with Earth Crisis, and I presume like being able to kind of chat with Carl and the guys in the band. For you, was that like a strange moment, going from like a fan doing a Firestorm cover in high school to having your own band, sharing the stage, being able to play with, idols and bands that you looked up to as a kid? Like, is that a strange kind of thing to reflect on?
It's a great feeling, and you build gradually, so you kind of meet people as you go, and it's more the bands you listen to, the bigger you get back then. And I think it was 99 or 2000, and we played a show in Syracuse, and Earth Crisis wasn't playing, but Carl was there. We had a great set. I remember after the set, he pulled me aside and said how much he enjoyed it, and he liked what I was doing. And like, for me, guy in his early 20s, that hit so hard. And it really gave me encouragement to keep going. Like, man, one of my idols just told me I was doing great. So that really kind of gave me extra confidence. And then, a year later, our first full length came out. And great band, great album.
I know, for myself, I've heard this record before. Earth Crisis was not like a band that I necessarily grew up listening to a lot. So this was like definitely an opportunity for me to kind of like really just dive head first into a lot of the research. But you listen to this record and I think, maybe it's like, it should be lauded more, because I feel like you could look at it and look at the era it was in and see like, 100% all these people took what these guys were doing. Like, their mixings of like, different styles of heavy metal. Like, there's definitely some like sludge stuff on here. And like, I mean, there's just so much kind of smashed together, and you can kind of just see where people took it and maybe even like got more praise for what they ultimately started.
A very heavy record, man. There's Slayer in there. It's very metallic, but they were kind of pigeonholed solely in the hardcore scene back then, so they didn't get the recognition that they maybe should have got by metalheads. But also things were a bit more divided at times. That kind of always comes and goes. But yeah, it's a extremely abrasive and aggressive record. Yeah, good one.
I like you said Slayer. I think there was like a quote I found. I can't remember if it was Scott or Carl, where they were like sitting there kind of like plotting their like takeover. And he's like, let's be like the hardcore Slayer. We just take all the breakdown parts that we like. And that's the song. That's the only part.
Yeah. On that note, I have a question for Trevor, but also for the panel. So in the last episode, I mentioned the chapter that I wrote, kind of analyzing the breakdown and structural breakdowns. It's kind of a companion piece to a larger project that I'm working on, which is a history of metalcore, trying to kind of track the entire subgenre, of which Unearth and Trevor's contribution features quite prominently. But I wanted to kind of ask, do we think that Destroy the Machines is the first real metalcore record? And if not, what is?
That's a great question, because you have the Cro-Mags,
Yeah.
you have Earth Crisis. You can even consider, I would consider Life of Agony. They were in the metal world.
Yep.
But it's definitely more of a hardcore record. Riv Runs Red.
I did a little like kind of preliminary research this morning, back over some notes that I had, and like you've got Integrity in the early 90s. You've got the whole Cleveland scene. So you've got Ringworm, The Promise in 93. Overcast do their debut record in 94. So like all of that stuff is really percolating, and there are a lot of like early progenitors. But I personally think that it is the first real metalcore record. And I think what they did is they did like a proof of concept with Firestorm, right? And Firestorm has become such an iconic anthem that I think that's overshadowed Destroy the Machines a little bit, in the ways that Trevor just kind of mentioned, like widely celebrated, but not really held up on that kind of pedestal. And I think they took what they were doing on Firestorm, like Austin said, the Slayer parts with the breakdowns, and then they just made it heavier. And Destroy the Machines is kind of like taking that proof of concept and really kind of solidifying it. And I feel like that 95 point is, from then on, you start to get like the defining metalcore records. And I think they're kind of like right at the opening of that kind of door. So, I mean, everyone's got an opinion, but I feel like we could make a convincing argument that it might be the first real metalcore record.
I think you're right. I think it's the first one that really truly came to prominence, because when that came out, they were a pretty big band. They're getting pretty massive, selling out good sized rooms. Remember even seeing a news piece on them back then. That was unheard of for bands in the underground. And a big thing was it was Carl's lyrics. And you say concept. That record is basically a concept record. All the themes are very similar. And it basically ties to the destruction that humanity causes on the planet, which has been a bunch of the themes that I've written about over the years. So again, influenced by him there. It's not just him, but other reasons. But the whole record did set the bar for what metal core should be. And you should be socially conscious. You should speak about it. Hold truth to power. Just tell people what's going on, because most people are in the dark. You have your friend life, your home life, your work, school, and you kind of ignore what's going on around you as the world is burning. And this record is a true warning, with a lot of urgency behind it.
Dylan, I know you're kind of maybe in the same boat that I am. I don't know, what do you see maybe some of like the kind of the roots from this record into maybe some of the more maybe the metalcore that you were listening to? I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, 100%. Obviously I started out, my era of metalcore was the era that Trevor helped usher in, the Boston, Massachusetts kind of scene, growing up listening to the Killswitch Engages, the Unearths, Darkest Hour, throw them in there as well. All of those great bands. And then seeing the fundamentals start on a record like this. And you look at you look at Earth Crisis, you look at like All Out War, which is one I wanted to bring up as well. You look at Ringworm, which Owen brought up, or you look at any of those early bands like that, or Converge might as well. They've been around for 30 plus years at this point. So you see all of that and you see it get honed and fine tuned in different manners throughout the years. Because Trevor's right. This record's not just like a hardcore record, right? Like there's Slayer riffs on it. There's Austin, you said there's sludge style stuff on here. There's borderline crowbar parts on here.
100%.
The song structures on this record are pretty wild. Like there's no atypical structure on here. It just kind of goes from part to section to you name it. There's not even a ton of breakdowns on it. They're used very sparingly in a very great way for impact. And to see something like this affect what came later is pretty wild, because I look at this the same way as like, deathcore was a few years ago, where everybody wants to talk about what started there. And to me, deathcore was like, oh, Dying Fetus has a record out, or like the Red Chord, for something like that. Like it all kind of starts somewhere, and then other bands just take what they love about whatever that first listen to whatever band it was, and they pull from there and go, what can we do with this? How can we make it better? How can we make it our own? To quote, I can't remember who said it in the DVD for Unearth, but someone said, oh, that's an Unearth breakdown. And that's how like my buddies and I used to determine if like a band was worth listening to. It's like, oh, is that an Unearth breakdown? Like, yeah, let's give them a shot. Let's fucking give it a go.
I think that record doesn't have a lot of the traditional build up and then just music only breakdowns. It's so heavy with the vocals. There's so many lyrics that he's singing over what you might think of as a breakdown, but Scott's just dancing with his right hand. Like there's so many riffs where you can just dance to yourself. If you do the hardcore dancing at the time, that was people dance now too, of course, but it was more of a dance to it at the time. It was more of the reaching for you climbing the ladder, you picking up the change. It was more of a rhythm than an aggressive punching act. I know things vary in different scenes at different times, but it was a very danceable record.
I was looking at the notes that Austin pulled together, and like you were saying, Trevor, in our last discussion on your record, 3 in the Eyes of Fire, Austin and Dylan did a superb job of pulling together exceptional notes to kind of make the jumping off points. And this episode is no exception. There's so much material here about this record and Earth Crisis and the history. So there's like so much cool stuff we can jump off on. But there's a kind of point in there where Carl talks about like wanting to further what they did on the EPs, so on All Out War and Firestorm. And he's like, we want more groove. We want more feel. And I feel like that kind of complements what you just said there about like, it's a bit dancier. It has a bit more playful kind of attitude to it. And in my playthrough this morning, I basically just went like All Out War, Firestorm, straight into Destroy the Machines. And like, it's really stark when you run it that way. Like you hear like, tuning heavier, drum production heavier, playing more playful. As you mentioned with Carl and his lyrics, like he's just scatting all over the place. Like it's full of stuff. It's a very busy record, but it's also like a very kind of refined record. And I think like threading that needle is what makes it so effective.
I agree. And I really love the leads over the bouncy dance riffs. It's the whole record has them, and you hear this sick lead, and all of a sudden they're dancing under it, and it's like, this is fucking thick, man. Like what a concept, Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe the most interesting, or one of the interesting things of like kind of diving into this band's like history a little bit was like just learning that it was kind of a side project in itself, like almost kind of an afterthought to start with. I mean, some of these guys, like I think Earth Crisis, like the foundations of it maybe started in 89. Carl like wanted to start a band, and he kind of had some skateboarding friends that he had brought in that he thought could do vocals, and they kind of rounded out. They played a few shows, fell apart, but he kept writing, and that's like kind of ultimately what became the All Out War EP. And then got connected with some other guys in a band called Framework, and through that they were like, yeah, our buddy Carl, like he's got some great songs here, let's help him out and we'll record this EP. And it kind of reminds me of just like how your band started, was essentially a side project in a way. You were in second division, you basically kind of connected with the guys in Point Oh Four. And, you know, I wonder, like, at what point, you know, it was just kind of interesting to like go back to our previous episode, and, you know, you seemed like almost kind of hesitant to do that. At what point did like Unearth, like how Ken was kind of badgering you to, you know, do this project with him? You know, what were some of the hangups on that? Like what ultimately, you know, persuaded you to dive into Unearth? Like how did that come to be?
So the exact way it went was I had a band in high school. The band was called Rind. And then right after high school, the band broke up. But three of us wanted to continue. So we formed Second Division, or 2D. And so this band, you know, had the same core, just different guitar players. And it was a bit more of a hardcore venture. Rind was very metalcore. You know, if you look back on that, like that was early 90s. So that was just kind of the sound that was being naturally produced at the time. But Second Division was more of a hardcore band. And we played a lot of shows with Point Oh Four, and they wanted to part ways with the singer. Second Division was starting to do really well regionally. Shows are getting bigger, and these are my friends, you know, the drummer and bassists I'd been with since high school. So I didn't want to leave the project. They were my guys, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to play. I wanted to play more metal. Second Division was more of a hardcore band, but the guys wanted it to be a bit more lighter, and we're starting to experiment with some lighter sounds. But I was still sticking with them. And then I had my appendix out that summer of 1998, and we were about to release our debut, like a 6-song CD. So we postponed it. But Ken kept coming over to ask me to be in this new project that was no longer Point Oh Four. They had 4 songs pieced together, and I just kept on saying no. So he got me to go over to do the side project. So we're just going to do a fun one with our friends, this band called Purity's Failure, with the other guys. It was going to be Ken and Mike Rudberg from what became Unearth. And then I think it was Mike and Nate from Purity's Failure. They signed a Goodfellow Records. It's a good band to check out. They didn't do much touring after the mid 2000s, but good band. But anyway, I showed up to practice, and it was not the side band practice. It was Point Oh Four there, all the guys, and they tricked me. I'm here, and so they played, and they played "Shattered by the Sun." It was just the music, and it was exactly what I wanted to hear. Well, this is exactly I had vocal ideas immediately. I picked up a mic, started singing along to their rough songs. Make my own float, everything, and it was an easy decision for me to join. So I was in both bands for a minute, and then I remember talking to Buzz. He was like, "We're trying to push this thing, so we just focus on one band." And so I'm like, you know what, it's better if I just step away and give Second Division a chance to continue. And they got a new singer. It didn't go very far, but most of the guys found other musical ventures after it too. But yeah, those are my great friends. So I didn't want to leave, but I found a band that was playing. That was our friends with playing music that was exactly what I wanted to hear. So then we became Unearth, and it's where it all really started. I'm glad Ken bugged me.
Hey, us too.
I mean, persistence pays off, right?
I couldn't go anywhere. I was hemmed up, you know. A lot of pain.
Well, you know, with this band too, it really seems like, you know, a lot of this, I mean, Carl having the material, and then even after that, it really just kind of like quick fire from that. How it sounded like, just based off what you said, like they had some songs already ready to go. Like how long before, you know, you start playing your first shows? Like I think the show that we saw, that your first show potentially was Buried Alive, Diecast, and All Out War. Is that right? Yeah. Yep. How was that?
It was great. Buzz booked it. So it was our first gig. It was packed. So it was a good start. And our first couple of shows were like that. And then it fell off quick. We had some really bad shows. I remember loading the trailer in Rochester, New Hampshire. I forget the name of the club right now, so I can't believe I forget. But it was forever ago. We were loading the trailer. We played in front of like, I think 3 people. And then Buzz turns to me, we're loading the van, and he goes, "Grab a hold." I'm like, "Grab a hold of what?" He goes, "The sickened ship." So There was a poor outlook at first, but then shortly after that show, we dropped our demo tape, which eventually became Above the Fallen Man EP in May of '99. And once the tape came out, then people started coming to our shows and singing all the words. And Buzz said that in his defense because Point oh Four was doing well regionally, and so was Second Division. So we had a fan base, even though Second Division didn't have records out. It was kind of easily easy to sing along to. People would know the words from just by going to the shows. So we would have our pylons. We had these great shows. Unearth starts and show people moshing, but it wasn't the same energy that we were used to. So we're like, this isn't as good. Maybe we should go back to other bands. But once the demo came out, then all of a sudden things changed quick.
And I know, like, just kind of again going off of like what I've learned about Earth Crisis, like, this All Out War 7-inch, I think came out on like a local label with like Conviction Records, and then pretty much the next few releases would come out on Victory. How did you get linked up with? I believe it was Endless Fight that released your first EP.
They did. So it was my job and Mike Redberg's job. We'd talk about what labels we wanted to send packages to, and I was in college at the time for journalism, so I had some courses where I actually made press packs and sent them to labels. Nice. And that's how we got signed to Eulogy. Something like a pro press pack. I think we even had fucking PowerPoint, and maybe not.
Hell yeah, let's go.
It was like legit. I sent it to labels, and I would hear back, and just did as pro as we could back then as kids, and we got a good shot with Eulogy, and then Metal Blade followed suit after.
I'm kind of surprised. I was talking to Dill off air. I'm like, I feel like this band could have ended up on Victory. Was that ever on the table? Did you ever link up with them at all?
To basically all the big ones at the time. Mm-hmm. I would talk to Tony on the phone. So many bands tell us not to sign there, but he could not have been more friendly to us. I won't pretend to know all the accounting issues that bands claim, but at least on the phone when he was trying to sign us, he was a very level-headed, friendly person. We chose not to go there for a variety of reasons, but yeah, we were in talks with Roadrunner, Century Media, Metal Blade, all the labels back then, and the Blade was the one that we chose. So they're the most forthcoming with us. They had the best contractors. There was only a couple records. So at the time when you're young, you're not sure what's going on. Two records seems a lot better than 6. The finances might have been less, but that doesn't matter when you just want to, get your footing and figure out where you stand in the world of metal. And it worked for us very well.
One of the things we talked about when we last met up for the pod, and we were talking about Three in the Eyes of Fire, was that Metal Blade doesn't really, or at least when you joined Metal Blade, they didn't really have a lot of metalcore bands on the roster. And I think they had more of a kind of cultural cachet that was, for lack of a better word, like traditional metal. So more progressive, thrash, maybe some sludge and doom stuff on there, but not what I would consider metalcore bands. And then after we did the episode, I kind of went back through to try and see if I got that wrong. And I went through and I was like, I forgot about Winter Solstice, great band that also put out a record on Metal Blade. But I guess in your head, like, you're talking to all the different labels. You've got your Roadrunners, Century Media, like, you've got labels that have a reputation for certain things. Was there any kind of discussion in the band about, like, if we go with Metal Blade, we can kind of like maybe put a bit more of like a stamp of legitimacy on what we're doing on the Unearth sound and put it on a roster against some of these other bands? Or were there other considerations at play?
I think the consideration that I can mention to what you're talking about is the fact that Metal Blade didn't really have metalcore. It would make us stand out on their label. Whereas Roadrunner and Century Media had bands that, they've already released records, and perhaps we'd be behind them in pecking order, like Roadrunner. Especially
Earth Crisis did Roadrunner at one point, right? So.
Yeah,
they did. Breed the Killers. But Killswitch, were our friends, had just signed to Roadrunner, and just by their slightly more commercial approach to metalcore, they're always going to be above in the pecking order anyway. So it's like, all right, well, they're going to be above us. Century Media had a bunch of bands too at the time. I forget. I remember Turmoil, great band.
Great band.
So sick. But Metal Blade made sense. Plus, they were so friendly, and they still are. I mean, even though we haven't been on them for a long time, we still see them at festivals, on tours. We still trade emails and text once in a while. They feel like a family there. They did very much so then, and they even still do now.
We were talking about just the kind of this like upward or like this kind of like slow introduction of like groove, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with like the drumming. There was, basically Mike Riccardi, as far as I remember, original Earth Crisis drummer who was in Framework. He was on the All Out War EP and then quit maybe like a few weeks before they were supposed to go on this like run of dates or like a festival in like Dayton, Ohio. And so they got Dennis Merrick, who's been their drummer till now. Like he's still their drummer. I believe he had played in Cinderblock, I read, with Tim Redmond from Snapcase and Scott Vogel from Terror. So he like Buffalo hardcore guy. He like went to college kind of near Syracuse, would go to these shows. He became friends with the Earth Crisis guys. So kind of like a natural like, hey, we need a drummer. You seem like you'd be a great fit for this. And so they kind of mentioned like he was definitely a hardcore drummer, but he had like maybe like this kind of like hip hop kind of like groove. I've even seen some of the things like John Bonham kind of laid back feel to it as well. So I have to wonder too, I believe Mike came in before the Oncoming Storm. How did his introduction to the band or his like input, how did that change, if at all, like the feel of Unearth and just like how a song might be constructed or the vibe of it?
Mike Justin, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Mike did change the sound a lot. If you listen to our first record, Stings of Conscience, if you isolate the drum tracks on a lot of those songs, it is almost like a hip hop record. It's very danceable. So that's where Mike Rudberg came from. He was more in that realm. Mike Justin's more of an animal. He's a chaos drummer, but what I like about him, what he does to our songs, he builds peaks and valleys out of the same riff that a drummer today that might be more to a click, that might not do this same thing that Mike Justin does. And you guys mentioned it last time where he's kind of like the secret sauce. And I see that. And I was refreshing on In the Eyes of Fire. I hadn't listened to the whole record in a while. And there's so many parts where the riff is happening the same, but he did something else to make it a unique section or build to the next part or transition. And that's not normal when it comes to drummers that just follow the click. So it is more organic. And so I think that's what Mike really adds where he adds the most flavor.
Yeah. I think we touched on it in the previous episode, but one of the things that I definitely noticed for those records is like the use of accents and kind of just doing just like slight little variations in like a kick pattern or a little fill or something to kind of offset maybe like the second run through of a breakdown so that it's not quite exactly the same as it was, on the previous kind of bar or whatever. And there's just like these little kind of hints and accents that for me, when I'm like really locked into the record, like at the gym or something, I'll hear a bit that I haven't heard before. And I'm like, fuck, that's sick. Just like, and it's so simple. It's just like a little fill here, a little extra like ride or like a fast tap somewhere. Just like all those little playful accents really do make things feel more like playful and loose and exciting.
I couldn't agree more. And there's a song that I always point to that does that. And it's Heresy by Pantera. And it's got the heavy part that's pushing the end of the song, just to kind of jam it. And Vinnie Paul's, going with it. The second time around, though, he is just kind of with the cymbals. Like, this is awesome. It's down in the mix, but it varies it up enough where you're like, man, I love this part. I love that accent he's threw in. It's timeless, really.
And just to quickly kind of finish that thought, like, in the chapter that I wrote about breakdowns, like the framework that I used is all about like the psychology of anticipation. And like why I think that's so effective is because like you can be a fan of heavy music, of metalcore, you can like understand all of the pieces and you have kind of like a very like straightforward template of like, I've heard a breakdown before. This is how it goes. We're dropping into the halftime feel, the quarter time feel. I know roughly where the snare hits are going to be. I know where the crash is going to be. So as soon as you modulate that expectation slightly and you put it like slightly off time, Meshuggah is a great example of like fucking with your brain chemistry to kind of like great effect. But modulating that anticipation is super effective because it like goes to your lizard brain, you know, like your subconscious is like, this is how it should go. And then if you're like pushing it off kilter, then you're like, ooh, I'm excited. And yeah, I still get a rush listening to your records for that exact reason, because there's little bits that I forget, little bits that I don't expect. And I'm like, fuck, that's so dope.
I like that we could produce that on our records because we grew up listening to bands and that's what we enjoy too. So that's awesome. And I do credit Mike a lot with that.
For a band to have like put out a couple releases within like a very small amount of time, I find it kind of hilarious in a way that like this band caused so much, like, you know, maybe it's the just, you know, kind of pre-internet thing, or like just the era that it came out in, like they caused so much controversy. Like there's so much like, you know, you look back on it and you have like the kind of like the hindsight now and everything. But at the time, it's so wild to think that like this band would go out on tour and get like maybe threatened with violence in a town that they'd never heard of, like after just a few releases. Like how does that happen? Like how do you 2 7-inches and everybody's like kind of like, I don't like what that guy says. I don't like what this band's about. Like, it's just so interesting.
Is that what, Earth Crisis?
Yeah, Earth Crisis. Like, just to, you know, they're talking about, you know, going on tour and like, yeah, there might be someone in another town who are like, we're gonna kick your ass. Why? What did I do? Like, I don't like what you said on that record. I don't agree with it. And or like just some of the shows. It's pretty wild.
I mean, there's the Destroy the Machines is all about how our species is killing the planet. So people will get upset with that if that's your industry. If you work in the slaughtering of animals or big oil, he's speaking against your industries. And people that work in it or might have a share in it or stake in it aren't going to be happy about that. And plus, it goes against people's beliefs. Like people don't like to hear bad news about stuff that they think is normal in their everyday life because they don't want to think they're doing anything bad for the world. And when you give them evidence, they're going to reject it. Only you have to give them repeated evidence that, hey, this is actually bad. We can change it, but people's initial reactions to get defensive. And so that's probably what he ran into.
In like kind of the Boston area, I know like there's like a handful of like straight edge bands that I could think of, like, you know, like Slapshot and everything. But, you know, were you going to like many of those shows? Where was it kind of like this contentious thing? Like, did you see like kind of sides split in different shows that you may have gone to?
No, our scene in Boston seemed pretty close. I mean, we were really the North Shore hardcore. So we play in towns like Wakefield and Lynn and Salem and Gloucester. We had great shows. You know, hundreds of kids would come out, and these bands weren't signed. They're just putting out demo tapes, and it was every show was awesome. We played Boston sometimes. Boston was generally difficult to get into because it was mostly 18 plus. A lot of shows were 21 plus. So we would play Boston, but it wasn't the same energy. But straight edge was a thing, especially in Maine. There was a whole crew in Maine that would wear like work gloves, yellow work gloves, and put the big X's on them, and they would go to our shows. You can see one of them is on our first record. We played a show in New Hampshire, I remember, with Hatebreed, and a few of them were there. They all do the sing along, and there was a pylon on the record, and you see one of the work gloves with X. That was that crew. Still see those guys sometimes. We just actually play up in Bangor recently, somewhere there, and there's one guy lives in Florida, I think. Yeah, people have stuck with us a long time.
Take out the old gloves. They look a little tattered, but yeah.
Put in the hardcore museum.
I just find that so fascinating that like, yeah, you really could have just put out like a couple releases and maybe toured, and like, yeah, that caused like a bit of a stir in your local scene or like all over. And this band toured pretty hard after Firestorm, from what I understand. I mean, they were broke as are many underground bands. And being like straight edge, you know, vegan guys, like read stories of like them eating out of peanut butter jars and you know, like sleeping under like the staircases of like a hotel until they got kicked out, and just like all of these different things. And I'd imagine those first couple tours for you, kind of like off of those first releases, were probably difficult, I'd imagine.
Yeah, we had a tough start. I mean, the shows were good, but we'd drive 13 hours and get paid $30. And some shows were great, some shows were terrible. But that's just the beginnings for most bands. Mike Justin did play in Earth Crisis for a little while, and he told us that they shared some of the stories of their early days of I guess they really had a hard time with trying to eat vegan, especially in Europe in the early days. So it was very difficult and challenging for them. But now it's in Europe, especially, it's very simple to go with that diet. And we've done a couple of tours where a few of us have chosen to go vegetarian, and it's super simple over there. I find it a lot harder in the USA to try to eat vegetarian on tour. It's basically impossible.
Dylan kind of lives within that world. I mean, have you done any tours while you were vegan or vegetarian?
I think the first one I did was that way, and the rest of the guys in the band were very much like, hey, there's a McDonald's up the street, like figure it out kind of thing. And it's like, all right, I'll figure it out and work to my best ability here. It was I'll say this, there was a certain supermarket that was based out of northern Arkansas that had a lot of things taken from it over time.
They just went missing.
That tour. I just don't know, just went missing.
Fell off the back of a truck.
There you go. I mean, it's far easier now. I mean, hell, you can go down the street and find something. But to what Trevor just said, from what I know and studying and everything, that it's still a little difficult in this area or in the U.S. to travel and eat on a plant-based lifestyle or a vegetarian lifestyle. But especially if you're in like the more rural areas, such as where like I grew up or where I live currently, it's much more difficult there. Once you hit below like the Mason-Dixon line, like it is like, just figure it out, man. Make the Bucky stop before you go, pick up what you need, do all of that. But, we were talking about, I hate to like backtrack on this, but we were talking about, the reputation that Earth Crisis had basically developed prior to this album coming out. And you look at all the controversy the band maybe had stirred up. That was also just kind of the time there, right? I think every person has heard a story about a band that may or may not have been true, and you just kind of went with it during this era because there was a kind of a mystery about it, right? Like I always look at Neurosis. No one knew a whole lot about that band. That band was kind of its own inclusive thing. They had this weird following. They were terrifying. And they would run into a town, play these shows that would decimate people and leave. And then there were stories left in the wake of that. So you look at a band like Earth Crisis, that newer band, hadn't even released a full length yet, has a lot of notoriety off of two 7-inches EPs, also has essentially a moral position that they choose to follow that is against everybody else's or against the vast majority. That upsets people. As Trevor said, nobody wants to hear that they're wrong. And this band isn't just saying, hey, you're wrong, here's why. They're going, you're wrong. And they're saying that over and over again with an escalated voice. They're just getting more and more direct with it. And it seems like with each release, it gets more and more direct. Fuck you, you're wrong, we're right. This is what life really is, and this is what it can be if you don't pay attention now.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously wasn't going to hardcore shows in the 90s in the States, but from what I've read and my kind of sense of things, it's like every kind of era of hardcore has its iconoclasts, right? And like I look at something like the Youth Crew movement, which generally had like a somewhat overwhelming kind of like positive kind of tone to it, which isn't going to ruffle as many feathers, although it will be kind of like distinct from a more like negative or aggressive kind of hardcore. And then in the 90s, you have like the Krishnacore thing, right? And that ruffled a lot of feathers because it was perhaps maybe too weird or too kind of esoteric for what should be something rooted in, apathy and destruction and kind of like heralding back to the lineage of punk and rebellion. But I think with Earth Crisis, what they tapped into was, as Dylan said, like a moral and ethical position and then to kind of like stamp that flag unwaveringly in a very militant kind of way. And that's what gets people kind of ruffled up. And like Trevor said, like if your livelihood, if your existence is kind of predicated on something that they are like morally and ethically opposed to, then it kind of your position in opposition is already kind of baked in. So like it's like an attack on your sense of self. So even if you're someone from like a hardcore scene that's supposed to be open-minded and inclusive and for the outcasts and all of the things that we hear again and again and again through different bands, a band like Earth Crisis will be like, no, actually, fuck you. Like that's gonna get people pissed off.
I remember being at their shows, and they would at merch sometimes would have a TV screen, they show slaughterhouses of animals being, severely mistreated, not even just killed for their food, but really severely mistreated, and that can cause a real visceral reaction of people. So they did a good job at opening people's eyes to it, and I think being militant like that, and not passive, does get the message across more. It was helpful. I know the entire upstate New York region was probably the most straight edge and vegan area of the United States when they were at their peak, because it did really kind of spread into that local culture. And I think that's important. I think maybe it did save some animals, or did set people on the right path, or at least open their eyes to what the world is doing.
Again, just like with the research I did, it seemed like maybe a lot of that, some of the touring and like, the confrontation, the conflict, maybe had an effect on some people. Like I know after the touring for Firestorm, Scott almost quit the band. Like he was kind of had it. Ben, their guitar player at the time, Ben Reed, was like very anxious on tour. I think they mentioned he might be like agoraphobic. He thought he was sick all the time. So there's just like all these things going on. And he would also just kind of like seem to maybe bail on some tours. So they kind of went their separate paths. And so when you're getting into the debut record, it seems like they went in and kind of wrote and recorded it as a 4-piece. I know they mentioned writing a lot of the material for this in like a rehearsal space called Love Shack in like the north side of Syracuse. Dead of winter. There's like barely any electricity in this place. I remember they were like, it was so cold we would go to the bathroom and find a heater and like just warm our hands up so we could play a little bit. As far as 3 is concerned, do you remember like kind of the initial origins of like how some of that material came to be? Where were you, did you have a rehearsal spot? Were you doing it at home in somebody's basement? What were kind of like the initial happenings of that record?
It's funny because I just talked about it today with Buzz and Pete, because we have a goal of being in the studio by the end of summer, early fall, and we only have some skeletons, and so we have to really get moving. And I said we did this before in a shorter time, and it was for In the Eyes of Fire. We toured very heavily on the Oncoming Storm album cycle, and we had to be in the studio by the spring of 2006, because we had to get out the record during Ozfest 06. And so we had 4 months. So we didn't play any shows for 4 months. And we were, Ken lived in a city called Grafton. And that is just around the Worcester area, Worcester, Mass, kind of at the center of Mass, and where we all live North Shore. So it was, over an hour. So me, Mike, and Buzz would travel every day. 3 or 4 days a week to Ken's and just rehearse. This was before we would change files. We just get there and practice. And a lot of days we did nothing. Sat there and we forced ourselves to do it. And maybe we get an idea and fix an arrangement, but nothing creative will come out of it really. So there's a lot of what felt like wasted time, but we got a really good record out of it. We weren't even done writing the record when we got to Seattle, and we lived there for 7 weeks. I had maybe 2 or 3 songs written vocally, so I had to do a lot of hustling there. We wrote a couple of songs, and while we're in the studio, and especially one that flew in last minute was Big Bear and the Hour of Chaos. We were done tracking basically everything. Only overdubs and vocals were left, and so drums were done, and most guitars were done. And they said, "Hey, get this riff. Let's just go fuck around with it." And they fucked around for an hour, and then just did one live take, and then Like, that sounds good. And then eventually they went to fix the guitars, but the drums were always one big take.
Yeah. Definitely one of the curious things that we had in our episode on 3 was, just how you kind of circled your way to Terry, and with Earth Crisis, this record in particular, I know Scott co-produced it, but they were big fans of the band Believer, and they had Jim Winters, who had filled in on tour with them before. He plays alternate guitar. I think he's credited on the record. But they had, two of the guys essentially, I believe Kurt Bachman and Joey Daub, who engineered the record. And it was really just because they had a particular, they wanted to capture the same kind of vibe. So they were like, let's just go with the guys who did that record, wrote it. And I think the name of the studio is called Trauma, and they thought it was going to be this surely this record was recorded in some expensive space, and it ended up being like a studio in somebody's mother's basement. But all this to say, I think initially we read that you had maybe tried to reach out to Ross Robinson. Was there any reason in particular that you saw him out first? Was it like a record he had done before? Why did that ultimately kind of fall apart? And then Terry Date was the one who worked on the record.
Ross and Terry were both ideas that Metal Blade and our management at the time put at us. We would have happily went back with Adam, since he did our debut and The Oncoming Storm and half of the Endless EP. But they wanted to mix something up. The trajectory of the band at the time, they wanted us to set ourselves apart. So they set up 2 interviews, Ross and Terry, and they were very, very different. I think you guys mentioned it in the last episode, whereas we liked Ross. He was awesome. He did some great work, but I don't think it would have worked with our personalities at the time, because things were starting to fall apart with Mike. Not with me in particular, but just kind of as a vibe thing. There's stress. I mean, Ken and I always had some underlying stress, and there's just stress in the camp because all the heavy touring we're doing, and I think the deadline to write the record so quickly, and feeling the pressure to make sure it was as good, or at least a good enough follow-up to one that really, put us on the map, worldwide. So there's a lot of pressure, and having a guy like Ross tell us that, he would have us crying, or fighting each other, because he likes the passion, didn't make sense for us at that moment in time. I think creatively, maybe a different moment in our career could have worked, but at that moment it might have broken us. Shatter us up into different pieces, and we've formed Unearth AD or whatever. It would have been
your some kind of monster moment, just like a real kind of breaking point for the band.
But then Terry came, and he was extremely chill and friendly, and just wanted to get the best performances out of us. And he came, and Ken's mom cooked this amazing Italian meal, and it was out of the world good. And he was so polite and nice, and his whole pedigree of the records he did, and especially since we're such big fans of Pantera, and we just previously toured with Diamond Vinny and Damage Plan, it seemed to make the most sense for us, So got in there, and we got to shoot the shit about Pantera and Diamond Vinny, and it was a very pleasant experience being in there. And we didn't fight to the point of wanting to break up in there at all. There was some tense moments, like any time in any band, but I think going with Ross might have not been a good time at that moment. But I'd love to work with that guy.
I'm still just kind of dreaming about what a Ross Robinson Unearth record would sound like. It just we'll never know. But I really would love to listen to it.
Man, I'm down to go.
Hell yeah.
Get him on the phone.
Tell me about that Studio X, because when I was looking it up, and I believe I mentioned in the episode, it was I saw they'd done a lot of commercial work maybe previously at a certain point. They did movie scores, and then I think it was owned by the Wilson sisters. But what was your experience? What was that studio like? I'm sure it's a lot different than somebody's mother's basement, but
it was the most expensive record we've ever done. For the guys that we had recording the record, the price tag was high. In the 7 week, that was the most we've ever taken to record a record. And we lived there. We lived in a Days Inn for 7 weeks. So it was very expensive to do that record. It was a very nice studio, large, had its own kitchen, had a huge control room, couple different living areas, tracking rooms. It was nice. It was very modern at the time.
What was what do you think took the longest as far as like I mean, you said you had some stuff to kind of like catch up on or fill in yourself, but what were there any hurdles, or was it all pretty much kind of smooth as far as recording the other pieces?
It wasn't no, it wasn't all that smooth. I remember there was some drama with tracking.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was in the back. I was writing vocals, and all of a sudden, there's the back like living room area, and then Terry comes in and sits down next to me. I'm like, "Aren't you tracking guitars?" And he said, "No, no. Ken told me to leave. He's going to track them himself." I'm like, "The fuck."
Paying all this money for this guy, and Ken's like, "Nah, I'll do it myself. It's fine."
I think they butted heads over something, and it got elevated. But we were there every day from, I think it was 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Sometimes we go
Wow.
longer, and it was literally every day. And so there was after a few weeks, stress starts to build up. So it all got squashed, of course, but there was some tense moments, and I don't usually like band members being in the studio when I track vocals. I like it to be a one-on-one with me and the producer. If they have an engineer, that's fine too, whatever. But I like that kind of chemistry. And so a couple of times we had to have Terry kick some guys out. So that was not pleasant. But now that now they know, it's just comment on it after, then I'll fix it if you're
Yeah.
that. Let us paint the picture, and then we'll fix something if you guys are really, really, desiring a change.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
very Bob Ross method with that. We'll fix it. We'll fix it here.
It is, that's how I feel, is especially with Will Putney. He's done our last couple of records, and I literally feel like we're painting when I'm in there. Like I'll have the vocals written, but then of course, we kind of it's a living animal. Sometimes you change things on the spot and rework things, and it's really fun. And you go different dynamics with different voices, and once you're locked in with somebody, you don't want someone else to actually, because then you hire this producer to be locked in with you, and then we can talk about it later. So that's my view.
So with having the long history with Adam D, who's basically a family member with you guys at this point, and working with someone like Terry Date to do, what was the difference between working with those two, especially with your vocal production on that? There's a lot of footage out there that kind of shows you recording during this record or on 3. So for you though, what was the big difference with working with those two? Was it a comfort thing? Did Terry add a level of maybe, I don't quite know who you are. I know what your legacy is. I know I know the records you've done. I know I love those records. Whereas with Adam, it's just like meeting up with, a family member down the street at the pub or something.
It was a different approach, so it's hard to compare them. In the Eyes of Fire, we went for a live sound records, no click. All the drums were done either in full or in sections in their entirety. Didn't go back and punch in fixes. With vocals, I'd do each phrase or do a line or two at a time. I'd do it only 3 times. So I never did a punch fix. We'd only pick the best phrase out of that time. So it was meant to sound like a live record. So if I was tracking with Adam and I was singing and it wasn't right, he'd stop it right then and there and he'd go, "No," he'd just make a goof of the situation. He'd move on and sing again. And that's kind of what Will does. He's not as goofy as Adam. But it's a very stop. Nope, that wasn't good. Let's go again. But with Terry, that was not the approach. It was, let's do this like it's a concert. And I like that approach too. I mean, I'd love to hear that record produced and performed like a standard studio record. But I think the charm in it is that it is a live record. I kind of fight myself on it because one song I really want to hear cleaner is Unstoppable. We've never played that one live, and I feel like if that was more produced and performed differently, it might hit harder. But I get in my own head, you know. I love that song, and it just never saw the light of day. Maybe if we do an anniversary on it, it'll be like Predetermined Sky and Catch Some Wings.
Hell yeah. I think we mentioned this in our previous chat, but I think for me anyway, like it's definitely the like warmest and definitely like the livest sounding Unearth record in the catalog. And I think that is probably a testament to this kind of recording process that you're talking about, and Terry's, I guess, kind of laid back approach to just kind of letting it be as organic as possible, and then kind of like piecing all of those bits together so you have this very live sounding record. But yeah, I mean, I would love to hear like a super like dialed in, clicked in modern studio version of those songs. Like that would be cool too. But I think there is such a charm and warmth to the way that album was recorded that it does set itself apart from the rest of the catalog.
Usually, in my experience, when you hear a song re-recorded that was from a certain time, like an era, even though it might sound technically better, it's not better. There's something about it. It loses something. So that's why we've talked about it. We've talked about re-recording our first record too, because that was done on a $1,600 budget.
Wow.
We know it would be much more proficient today, but there's something about the energy on that record. Like don't want to mess with that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I could do a whole episode talking about like re-recordings and remasters and my opinion on that. But no, I'm fully with you. I feel like those records are kind of like trapped in amber, you know, and they capture a particular moment of time, of the culture, of a band, chemistry, all those sorts of things. So like re-recording it is never going to make it sound better. It will just be different in a multitude of different ways. I
think it might work more with pop music for some reason. But I'm not an expert on pop. I mean, I hear bands that, you know, bands like Testament did First Strike Still Deadly, and that's one of my favorite bands of all time. And they were proficient as hell. They sounded killer. Chuck's voice was on fire, but I still prefer to hear the original versions of those songs, you know, because that's just what my ears know. My brain knows it. I prefer it.
Paul Bearer recently did a complete re-recording and remaster of Foundations of Burden from 2014. One of my favorite Doom records of all time. And I love the new recording and I think it sounds great. But if you put a gun to my head and you're like, which one are you going to listen to? It's the original. It's always going to be the original, you know, like the new one is just like a curiosity and an oddity of like, oh, I wonder how that would sound if they're a little bit more proficient. They got a little bit more time. They got a little bit more budget, whatever, bells and whistles. But the original is still the original.
Yeah. But does it open up new doors? But should it? I don't know. Like it's a deep conversation because kids in 7th grade today still wear Master Puppet shirts.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
They're not listening to the re-recording of Master Puppets. They're listening to Master Puppets. It's part of there's something about tying it to that era and that sound of the time makes the record stand out. Like, yeah, sure, we can make it sound like 2025 in the Eyes of Fire, but would we want that? Would that sound good? You know?
Yeah.
We wrestle with it all the time.
Was there anything that Terry experimented with while, you know, production sense? Was there a reason why you excluded, you know, a Block of Ice from this record at all? Or
that was random. That was for our first record, and that was random. We were driving by a place near Zing Studios in Westfield, and I think they had a sign said, you know, blocks of dry ice. You know, like, I think Ken had the idea. Let's get that. Let's make the record cooler.
How do you go about like making up a Block of Ice?
We just brought it in to Adam, and he was like, whatever. He literally mic'd it. There's a track in the record.
He's got a couple 57s just angled at it.
Dumb shit for fun.
Love it.
What was the question about Terry?
I did. Were there anything that like maybe he brought to the like? It feels like a pretty, you know, straightforward record, obviously. But was there any sort of like production techniques that he maybe like had attempted that maybe you hadn't tried before, if you recall?
Yeah. We really went for it vocally. They cover on the DVDs. I did sing some of the record with just a regular monitor, no headphones. It was like a live show. and some normal with the headphones and the mic. It was all most of the record was an SM58. I think it is some with a 7 as well, but mostly the 58. But he had me sing in different ways. Like in So It Goes, I sang through a walkie-talkie from across the room into another one and that was being mic'd. And then during Imposter's Kingdom, he had the gain all the way up, and I was on the other end of the room. So I was like 30 feet away. But you can hear me. It sounds like I'm right there, but there's extra kind of it's almost like a natural distortion because it's so far away. And it was kind of weird stuff like that. It was stuff that I'd never done before. It was fun. It was fun to experiment, and it sounds good in the record.
I would say this record, Destroy the Machines, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if there's like really anything too crazy. There's some like kind of reverse effects going on. The thing to maybe kind of like usher in a conversation about what we're hearing, the thing that really like got me was here's 3 records that like would like pretty much influenced what came out. And I mentioned that Believer band previously. Their record from '93, Dimensions, was a big one. They mentioned Carcass's Heartwork from '93 as well. And then Corrosion of Conformity, Blind, from '91. And, I would love to hear whoever wants to start, like when you turn this record on, what are you hearing? Like, what's like the first thing that kind of sticks out to you?
It sounds like a hardcore Slayer. It's dark, it's a very dark record with the leads and then the bouncy chug riffs. The hardcore version of Slayer is my opinion on that record. And I think they changed drastically on Gomorrah's Season Ends. That's more of a industrial metallic hardcore record. Very dark. I think the record's even darker. I would play remember that game Russian Attack on original Nintendo?
Dylan?
Yeah.
It was old. It was an old game. I broke it back out in the mid '90s when that record came out. I remember playing Russian Attack to Gomorrah Season Ends, and it's a very dark, dreary game. You're fighting the enemy. It's going through this. It's kind of like Contra, but you're fighting Russians.
Sure.
That record's a perfect soundtrack for that game.
Oh, that's amazing.
Whoever's listening, do it right now and get back to us on that.
It's out there.
I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, it's like definitely got the Slayer kind of influence hardcore vibe, but like I hear so much fucking sludge on this record, like Crowbar, like some of those bends. I think it's the Discipline that opens up with like just kind of like, I want to say it's like Crowbar self-titled. There's like a riff that I felt like was just lifted straight out of that record. So there's like, I feel like there's a lot of surprises. Like, yes, if I'm looking for like a straight ahead, like metallic hardcore record, I'm going to get it. But then, maybe on like Forced March, there's some stuff on here that I'm like, oh, that kind of sounds like fucking Living Color, like Cult of Personality, kind of like the weird meandering riffing that's going on here. It's like you mentioned earlier, like Scott's like fucking hands, like right hand on this record, nuts. Like he's all over the place. There's some Lana kind of meandering riffs going on, but yeah, there's a lot of surprises here. So like, I don't think it's necessarily just like, yes, it's that, but it's also like a ton of other shit going on.
There's a lot of, we've talked about it. There's a ton of groove on here. Right. And if you took the hardcore title off of this, it would fit right with all of those early '90s metal records that came out, or those, alt rock records that came out that were just really aggressive bands, like a Helmet, right? Like there's some stuff on here that's kind of that stomp groove that they had. Obviously Pantera right out the gate with some of this stuff. I heard some of the Living Color stuff as well on here. I mean, there's a riff on Deliverance that's like 35 seconds in. That's just like, okay, these guys were listening to thrash records in the van for sure. Like there's no way there's not a Testament record somewhere tied in there. And also learning that a lot of these guys were like metal guys before they got into hardcore really fits in with some of their technical proficiency when it comes to how they approach all this stuff. I hear Burn My Eyes all over this record.
Yeah.
I just hear it. It's timely. It's the same year. Burn My Eyes came out in 94, I believe, 94, maybe early 95. I hear that. I hear a lot of the dissonant, like Neurosis kind of post metal stuff at some of the intros. I mean, you look at like Destroy the Machines, half the song's a build up intro, right? And then it gets to the meat and potatoes part of that. So there's a ton of really varied shit on here that's not just a hardcore record.
What were you gonna say, Trevor? Sorry.
I was going to say that Wrath of Sanity was a song that we gave my second band, Second Division, that we gave people that song to learn as a cover when they were trying out for guitar. And so that band's always been important to my bands, my first band and second band, and of course just forever. But what a great record.
That breakdown, like right at like the 3-minute mark when it like the pick scrapes and stuff like that at that song. Man, that shit's, there's a lot of great breakdowns, but that's definitely one of my favorites. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I was saying before that like in my kind of run through, there's like a noticeable shift both in like composition and production going from the Firestorm EP to this record. And I think for me, like that's kind of immediately noticeable through like Forced March and Born from Pain. But where it really kind of clicked for me in terms of that like proof of concept kind of bit that I was talking about was kind of going back to back from The Discipline into Deliverance. Because I feel like The Discipline is kind of them doing like an updated version of Firestorm or doing like another kind of retread on this like hardcore anthem, but in the metalcore Earth Crisis styling. So it's very anthemic, it's very straightforward, very rooted in like their hardcore kind of foundations. And then it goes straight into Deliverance. And like Dylan said, like, it's just thrash. It's just Slayer. Like, they're like, okay, we've got the catchy shit. We've got the pile-on shit. Now we're just going to riff. And like putting those kind of back to back right in the middle of the record, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, I know exactly what kind of like synthesis they're going for.
I also like the use of, I feel like there's a lot of repetition on this record, you know, like the important, like, hey, we've said it a million times on this. Like, if you have a good riff, I don't know if I need a couple more. We could just play this one until it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So, like, it's really, there is a lot of like driving parts, and I'll say Dennis, when he plays along, like as a drummer, like with some of the little like galloping or like triplet like accents that he's doing over some of these things is like, you know. So if maybe there's like a simpler part here, maybe someone else is kind of filling out the space with some of the more like creative, unique shit. And then, you know, then you got Carl, who's just like as pissed off as anyone I've ever heard on a record. So great.
He said a lot of words in that record.
Yeah.
A lot of words.
Yeah. Yes, he definitely did.
Trevor, are there any moments on here vocally that stand out for you? Because obviously that's I guess like when you heard this record, were you doing Rind at this point, or is Rind still like a little bit after this?
Rind continued a little bit after this, but not too much longer. Took a few months off, and then we broke up in early '96. So yeah, maybe it was even late '95 we broke up, but yeah. So that record wasn't a huge influence on the Rind days. We were already basically done. But it was a big influence on Second Division. His voice is pretty linear the whole record, but I really do like it feels heartfelt, and it's just heavy, and it's tasteful the whole time. It doesn't do a lot of different things. It's right in your face. You can understand a lot of what he's saying too, which is important to his lyrical content. Yeah, I think he did a great job. I prefer that style of voice to what he chose on Gomorrah Season Ends. Even though I still love that style, but he drastically changed it. And not a lot of singers do that from record to record. That was an interesting difference, but the music sounded different, so it's probably what led to the majority of it. But yeah, I love the quality of his voice in that record.
One kind of like added point on the vocal stuff. Like one thing I've always loved about your work with Unearth is you have this very like, I don't want to say clean because you're doing like a lot of yelling and a lot of screaming on the records, but there's a lot of clarity and a lot of enunciation to how you deliver vocals. And Unearth has always been one of those bands where it's very easy for me to know what you're saying and to know exactly what the lyrics are doing in the context of the rest of the instrumentals, and to really kind of like not have to struggle to be like, what the fuck's Trevor saying here? Or like, well, what's that part doing? And I feel like Earth Crisis and Carl's vocals do the exact same thing. Like he sits in a very comfortable mid-range. He still sounds aggressive as hell, but you can understand what he's saying. And I think for a band that is so explicitly and emphatically message driven, that's really key. Because like you can't be packing this record with a lot of historical context and messages and ethics and then have people be like, what the fuck is that dude saying? Like, I have no idea. So I just think that clarity is like a really key point.
Yeah, I definitely learned from him from that too. I mean, you know, there's other singers that do the same, but if you have a message, you want people to hear it. You don't want it to be just gargled out and not heard. So it's he does a great job with that.
I know there are a lot of riffs on here. There's some great breakdowns on here. If we could attempt, do you have any favorite riffs or breakdowns, favorite moments from the record in particular? I mean, I don't think there's really a bad track on here by any means. Like, I think everything has like a hook or something that I could really like, fuck yeah, that like, even if it were just played for a second, I'm like, favorite song of the record. Awesome. I don't know. Is there a standout moment for you here on the record, Trevor?
I mean, the chorus in Wrath of Sanity is, you know, that's the biggest pylon it would have for that. Yeah, I wrote down a little bit. And as physiate.
Yeah.
That's
however that, yeah.
I was just looking at that. I was like, what's with the Z? Is that meant to be like asphyxiate, but cooler? I don't know what's going on there.
But I have it. This is the dancing right hand. That song makes you just want to get in the pit and climb the ladder and you know, he's killing it for the whole record, really.
Anybody else? Anybody any particular moments?
I will second Wrath of Sanity is probably my favorite track on the record. Just a real ass beater. And to really kind of put that at the very end, like we talked about this at length in the last chat, but like I'm a big sequencing guy. I'm a big fan of like knowing how to spread out all of your good songs across a record so that there's still some cool shit happening at the very back end of side B and not front loading everything onto side A. This record has great sequencing. Everything flows well. All of the songs are great. The Wrath of Sanity kicks ass. And I also think Born from Pain is pretty dope. I also love the title track as well as kind of like the real kind of message point of the whole album, the themes and the stuff that Trevor's been talking about. Like it's all there. And that's, you know, the third track on the record. Like they put that nice and front loaded to make sure you know exactly what's up. And then they just beat your ass for the rest of the record.
The track New Ethic is one that really stands out a lot to me. There's a pretty crazy transition in the beginning of that the drums are playing under obviously the same riff, but they're playing different things that transition to the next part. It almost feels like it's not playing anything differently. That just completely blew me away. Title track is fantastic. I love that it's literally just two sections of one song. It's this crazy build up, and then you get this great release for the last like minute and a half of the track. But the 1-2 of the Discipline and Deliverance is just second to none for me. I'd be amiss if I did not mention the bass playing on this record. It is not typical to this style of music. He is actually playing really creative and interesting stuff all over this record. There's walking bass lines, there's little flourishes. He's playing around with octaves and filling stuff out, and really, really fun bass player.
Yeah, he's a great performer too. And a lot of bands, a lot of bassists would emulate him on stage. You know, they would jump and do the move he would do because he's kind of iconic for that time. You know, a lot of great bass.
Really good bass tone too on this record. Like really like nice. It sits well in the mix. Like it's not buried. It's not too prominent. It's not too, you know, like jazzy or anything. Like it's doing exactly what it needs to do, and then just a little bit extra.
As we kind of close down here, I know they did like a bit of touring for this record a little after. there was a very unfortunate bus accident that followed the release of this record that kind of put him out of commission for a while. I think Dennis had like some collapsed lungs that like he couldn't play with them. I think some of the members went and formed like another project. What was it? I believe it's called what? Path of
Resistance.
Path of Resistance. Yeah.
Sick.
So they were stayed
Sick
busy, right? You know, I'd have to imagine like being out on the road and doing this for a while. You've probably had some pretty close calls. We've seen it like a million times, like with bands over the years. But like I couldn't imagine like putting like everything into this record and then it kind of just like getting kind of cut short by like such a tragic accident. I know they were on tour with Shelter, who I think also flipped their bus over on its side, but they seemed to be fine. But have you experienced any close calls in the past like that?
It's probably why Gomorrah Seasons was so much darker of a record. We've been lucky. We've never had any major wrecks. We've had minor accidents, but nothing crazy. We were hit by a drunk driver once. We were in New Mexico. We were just driving, and we had a conversion van. It was mine at the time, and we just got smashed and kind of spun and get out, and woman's hammered, and the tongue of our trailer was severed. So that kind of saved us. Like it I imagine it would have been worse. We kept on getting pushed, but that got severed and was gone. So yeah, that was a hiccup on tour. But luckily nothing ever too serious, just some minor accidents.
Good. Yeah, glad to hear it. I know when they did ultimately come back, they played the first Ozfest, which, you know, like kind of crazy to like come and be on stage with you know, some of these bands. I think they played the second stage. You know, maybe like almost 10 years later, you had also played Ozfest. What was that experience like for you, you know, following the release of 3? Like, I forget some of the names you were playing with, but, you know, going from like maybe like a couple days of a festival to like this kind of full blown tour, like I'm sure it was just like kind of this, I don't know if well-oiled machine, but it was a machine nonetheless. It's like just this huge thing.
We did 04 Ozfest first.
Oh, really? That's right.
And then we did 06. 06 was a fixed slot, and we actually got paid. A much different experience than first year. 04, all second stage bands that weren't in a fixed slot, we all had to pay to get on. Well, our labels did. A good amount of money. Things it wouldn't happen today. That we all had to rotate. So some days you'd be on at 9 in the morning, and the latest you would play, I think, was noon. It was a really fun tour, though. It was the most fun tour maybe ever, because all of our friends, all the bands we come up with, and then the bands on the main stage was the Sabbath, it was Priest, Slayer. So like this is like the best festival ever created. And yeah, we all, most of the dudes and girls that were in bands were, you know, all in our 20s. So we just had a really, really fun summer. A bunch of us formed this crew called the SOC.
Okay.
The Shirts Off crew. And basically every night we'd go and circle pit for Sabbath. And some dudes have tattoos, SOC on them. And then we got shut down for a couple of shows because we got really excited. You know, we had this kind of tight knit community. We'd just take our shirts off and we'd go circle pit, come back. And we were so excited that one day we had a bonfire. We started burning our shirts. You know, fuck shirts. and Sharon Osbourne got pretty upset with us. We had a fire on the premises, so we had to shut it down for a little while, but we came back by the end.
It's all this bureaucracy, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
I think you're doing something right if you're pissing off Sharon Osbourne. I'll just say that. I think that's fine.
Hey, you're overseas, like they can't hurt you, I don't think. But
they had rules, and you'd break them, and you didn't really get in that much trouble. You know what I mean? Like dudes were always, you know, stealing golf carts. Everyone, you know, that's the thing. But dudes get pretty reckless on them. Like go off site, and you know, one time Buzz got literally pulled over by a helicopter because on someone's farm, and you know, you're just doing really stupid shit. And you wouldn't really get in that much trouble. You know, you get talking to, but you don't get kicked off the tour or anything.
I just have a random question that I wanted to ask Trevor, but this is probably the only opportunity that I'll ever have to kind of put it to the man himself. But I spoke about this on the last episode, Trevor. The first time I saw you guys play was a tour run that you did here in Australia with Walls of Jericho and Mindsnare in 2007.
Yes.
Just after three came out. I was living in Brisbane at the time, and I was 19, and I was working in a venue. And due to the liquor licensing, we had to do like an all ages or like an under 18 show in the afternoon, and then it was an 18 plus show like in the evening. And I remember I was working on the bar in that venue, and the under 18 show did not sell that many tickets, and it was a very big room, so it ended up being like very empty. And then I remember the 18 plus show was like sold out, so it was like max full of people. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because the under 18 show for me was so fun because it was basically an empty show. I vividly remember like all of the crew and all of the bands just like pitting and having fun and just goofing off and being real silly. And I remember like all of you guys were like pitting for Mindsnare, and then everyone was like jumping around and throwing, you know, chairs and stools and stuff around for Walls of Jericho. And it was like so fun. And I just wanted to know, do you remember that show? I know you've played like hundreds of shows, but does that tour or show stick out in your memory at all?
The tour does especially, but I had forgotten about that particular gig.
That's fair. I think it was more important for me than it was for you.
No, but you know, it's a memory that's still there, and that bands generally, if bands are getting along a tour, and you have a dud show, you generally do that. And there was one show I remember we played, it's like 1,000 cap room in Austria. It was us, Evergreen Terrace, Bane, and Casey Jones. It was a pretty good tour package. We did 1,900 tickets in Lunen, Germany. We did 40 tickets in Austria. It was maybe same tour, like a week later, 40 people. And so we danced all the bands, did sing-alongs. During our set, we brought all the backstage booze on stage. We invited everyone from the crowd to come up and just have an open bar. We had
Incredible.
We had a wall of death on stage, which we've also done. And we've done that in a couple cities. One in Luxembourg years ago, because it's a small place with a lot of people, and you don't go somewhere to suck. And so if the show doesn't have the energy, you kind of make it yourself, and then you give people a memory that did come together. You don't want to take it out on people that came. You know what I mean? And so just have fun and rip it. And but that was just that didn't make any sense to us, because we were literally there 2 years before with Atreyu when we did the day and night thing, the matinee with the underage, but they were both sell out. So it did show us a sharp contrast from playing, you know, more melodic, sing-songy metalcore to aggressive metalcore, that you don't have the youth really. You know, we had the 18 over a crowd, and the kids didn't really want to go. So we kind of stopped doing those. I think we gave a couple more a shot, but it don't make much sense for who's in their 40s now.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a weird like thing with the way that the liquor licensing worked. And like, I think it's all changed now. And like now they just do like a licensed all ages show. So like you wouldn't have to split the base by that kind of way. But I worked at that venue for like a year or two, and all of those under 18 shows sold poorly, regardless of the bands. Like there just wasn't really kids weren't being like, oh, we should go to the nightclub for the under 18 show. You know what I mean? Like the ticket draw wasn't really there, but I still it sticks out in my mind because I got to hear you guys crush it to a room of like 20 people, and I got to pit to all of my favorite songs, and I was just like, this fucking rocks. Like, how often do you get this opportunity? Not very often. So it was
glad to share that experience with you.
Thank you, sir.
That was a fun tour, really fun tour.
Yeah. And listen to Mindsnare. I said this on the episode last time, but one of the greatest exports that Australia's ever produced. They're like your favorite hardcore band's favorite band. They're the fucking goats.
Yeah, they're great. Good tour mates. Killer band, awesome live too. So we had a really fun time on that tour. Remember the last show on the tour was Perth, and we had there was like a dance night after at the Hi-Fi, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, so and all of us went in, we danced. We're not dancers, but we just fucked around and danced.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Good vibes on that tour.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You've already like spent so much with us, and I really appreciate it. Maybe to kind of like put a pin on Destroy the Machines. When you listen to this record, or like maybe even like a few years down the road, or if you're sharing it to someone, what do you hope they get out of you? What do you hope the legacy of this particular record is, or Earth Crisis in general? Like, what do you hope people will, find when they listen to this album?
I just want them to hear how good the record is. I think sometimes people might get trapped in what's out, what's new. That's good, and they don't listen. They don't go backwards, and that's I mentioned earlier today how me and my friends we found thrash first, and then we went backwards to Sabbath, Priest. We found the older stuff later, and even as we got older, then we kind of discovered Dio Sabbath, because that wasn't really pushed on us when we were younger. You should always find stuff that was before you, because there are a lot of great records that formed what you're listening to today. So I think that it's a great record. I think it is an all-time great. I don't believe I'm understating that. I think it's one of the most important records in metalcore history. I know it leans more into the hardcore world, but it's so metallic that it really did help form what modern metalcore sounds like.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. One thing we like to do before we close out the show, as far as like stuff from our past that we've been listening to, is there anything as of late that you've been listening to that you think people should check out? And it could be heavy, it could be it could be anything. We'd love to hear about what you've been checking out.
Yeah, there's a band from Denmark called Might TK. They just put out I think this EP. It's brutally heavy. See, I get that right. I'm using Qobuz now. You guys using that? Because they're a little more ethical than Spotify. Ever heard of it?
Apparently, it's the best sound quality too, like the highest fidelity. I've heard that. Yeah.
No shit.
I've noticed the only negative is sometimes it takes a little longer to load.
Yeah, I use YouTube Music, and it's not as fast as Spotify. It's not quite as optimized, but is slightly more ethical. So there you go.
There you go.
So you see it. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
Okay.
It's really good. It's super heavy. That's 10 songs. They're short songs. They're more grindy, but
yeah,
it's good. Check that one out.
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
What have you guys been listening to? Anything?
I've got a bunch of stuff. Australia has really kind of gone crazy with a bunch of stellar EPs this year. And for the podcast, I'll be kind of running through some of my favorites. But one that stands out, there's a band from New South Wales called Scram, and they're quite literally teenagers. I think most of the band is like 17 or 18. They've just put out a demo. It's called the Yamba demo, which is like the town from New South Wales that they're from. So sick. It's like kids doing Marauder, kickback, full just like windbreaker, spin kick, fucking metallic hardcore shit, and it fucking rocks. It's so good. Like light years heavier than most bands like double their age. It's fucking psycho. So it's on Bandcamp. You can go find it. It fucking rocks.
Oh yeah. Dill?
The kids are all right, as it turns out.
Yeah.
A few things. Still at the tail end of the year here, but there's still great releases coming out. The new Bloodhouse Nord album, Ethereal Horizons. Yep, had it right. Great atmospheric black metal. Really weird. A lot of psychedelia involved with it. Really fun listen if you're into that. But for the heavy side, the really heavy side, I am still listening and enjoying the newest Sanguisugabog album, Hideous Aftermath. That thing is wild.
Real caveman shit.
It's as knuckle dragging as it gets. And I fucking love it. And one more band I just discovered within the last couple of weeks, Weeping. Spiritual Barbarianism is the most recent release. It's death, it's grind, it's power violence. It's got some of the most abrasive vocals I've ever heard on any recording on it. It's like 14 minutes, 10 songs. They were on that most recent Vitriol tour that not going into that. But things fall apart.
What happened?
Check that band out. Leaving that one alone. Check that band out. But that's what I've got going on.
Sick. I picked a real calm one this week. I was up in Wisconsin. I saw a copy of this. I had to pick it up. old Pig Destroyer Phantom Limb for Virginia.
Love that cover.
Great John Baisley artwork there.
Incredible.
Virginia, some Massachusetts tie in there. But some of my fucking favorite riffs. Heathen Temple, amazing. It's just so much fun. Listen to like Terrifier into this record. Perfect. And then listen to Unearth. 3 in the Eyes of Fire. Great record. We love that record.
Why not, right?
Trevor, you said you're working on a new record, right? Or starting to?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Let's go. 2026.
To be in the studio by late summer, early fall 2026. That's the goal. We'll see if we can fall in line and write fast enough, but that is the goal right now. So I would expect something in 2027 for sure.
Yeah. Are you planning to go to Will again, or are you going to mix things up?
I love tracking with Will. We haven't made the final decision. I'm not even sure if Will is available when we have to get in because he's so busy.
He's a busy guy.
Very busy. Extremely talented guy too. So I'd always love to work with him. Yeah.
I hear Ross Robinson might have an opening if you want to hit him up.
I work with anybody, man. Go for it.
I love it. I know you just got done with like a handful of shows, but anything on the horizon that if you can disclose, or just, I don't know. I mean, with the year closing, looking ahead, is there anything you want to accomplish as a band or just in life in yourself? Like what do you looking forward to in the next year?
With the band, this was our last gig for a while. We did have a Latin American tour that was supposed to be in February, but that's being pushed back to, it looks like, probably May. But nothing's confirmed, so we can't say exactly. There's some other stuff we're working on internationally for May and June. Looking for one more tour to kind of finish out the Wretched album cycle. We submitted for a few for the spring. We're not sure if we're going to do it. If it's not the right tour, we'll just shut it down and spend that time to write. But the only thing that's confirmed in the books right now is in July and August, we have some gigs in Europe, and we'll be doing a kind of a festival run with clubs in between. So that's the only thing really fully confirmed. But there'll be some stuff. But for now, it's just us focusing on writing the record. Good to be home and figure out home life and family and everything.
Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next. And dude, thank you again so much. We've been talking for a little while now here, and I really appreciate just getting to pick your brain about some of this shit. So
thanks for having me here. It was good talking to guys and good to catch up about everything. And you guys do a good job with research and everything. It's easy to recall things that way.
Oh,
you spawn a memory from 20-something years ago. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say, Dylan, Austin, thank you for having me on your show again. I appreciate the call up and the opportunity to chat to Trevor. So sick.
Yeah, door's always open for most people. But thanks for checking us out. Follow Unearth. Follow the Pitch of Discontent. Great podcast. You can follow us, I guess. But for myself, for Dylan, for Owen, for Trevor, you've been listening to Riff Worship. We'll be back next week with something else. See ya.
See ya.